Hello, Old School Comics Review. We're going to look at American Flagg by Howard Chaykin. This is the original series, which went up till about 50 issues, and then they did Volume 2, which was called Howard Chaykin's American Flagg, and which only ran for 12. But we're going to look at the original series, but we are going to look at the original 12 issues of the original series. So it's just called American Flagg. For people who aren't familiar with Howard Chaykin has been around forever. He's been around since at least the early, or say mid 70s, and he's done work everywhere. He's done writing for television. He's done all sorts of artwork in the commercial art world. He's done stuff for Marvel. He's done stuff for DC. Some of the most recent stuff that I can remember seeing, he did a Marvel Max series called Dominic Fortune for Marvel. He's done some artwork on Wolverine. He's done some writing for Squadron Supreme. I remember back in the 80s him kind of reinvigorating the Shadow and Nighthawk franchises for DC Comics. He did the pencils on the original adaptation of Star Wars back in '77 or whether, along with a group of other inkers. And like I said, he's done work for television writing. He's been all over the place. This series came out from an independent comic book company that's no longer around called First Comics, and it's kind of hard to explain, not because when you read the comics they're actually easy to understand, but they're so layered and textured and dense and involved and complex. But I'm going to give it a shot. Basically, it's a science fiction action adventure series set in the near future. It's set in around the year 2030, and it stars Reuben Flagg. Reuben Flagg is an ex-television star who gets fired because technology is so advanced now that they use computer-generated images and holograms, and they fire all the actors, which is a little bit like what's starting to happen in real life now. Reuben Flagg was born on Mars, and it's the future, so Mars has been colonized, whatever. And what's happening is here on Earth, and the United States in particular, everything is kind of gone to hell and run down. Reuben gets drafted to be a law enforcement agent. He comes to Chicago, and he finds out how violent and corrupt everything is, and it's basically him trying to fight some of the evil things and crime and terrorists and things like that, as well as fighting graft and corruption, while at the same time becoming slightly corrupt himself. It's kind of set in, I don't want to say it's a grim series, even though there's lots of violence, lots of sex and things like that. But basically the idea is it's the near future. The Soviet Union has completely fallen apart. America is no longer a major superpower. There are dirty, filthy, dumbed-down television shows just filling the airways. There's pornography everywhere. There's sex everywhere. There's violent biker gangs tearing things up. There's terrorists running around. There's domestic terrorists running around. And it's just a crazy concept. Some of the main characters are Reuben Flagg. There's Rawl the talking cat. There's Mandy, who is she's this kind of techno whiz who actually is supposed to be a air traffic controller, but because only 2 flights come in a week, she's got all kinds of time to just get into trouble and do things. There's Crystal, who's a female pilot. There's Casey Blitz, who's the mayor of Chicago, the completely corrupted mayor of Chicago. There's his daughter, Media Blitz, who starts off as this member of a biker gang, but then becomes a ranger herself. And there's a multitude of other characters. There's one particular I guess urban, or I shouldn't say urban, but domestic terrorist group called the ASLC, which is kind of loosely patterned on some of the survivalist groups and, militias from, the 80s and early 90s. What this series really is, though, for all the violence and corruption and things like that, there's also lots of humor. It's really a social political satire. there's not this sort of, it's not a grim read. It's actually a fun read. Another thing is, I think I mentioned there's lots of sex in it. There's lots of drawings of like women in garters and high heels and things like that. But it's not done in an adolescent way. It's actually done in a kind of frank and mature way. And when you read it, you don't get the sense of, he's not pandering. It's not like, let's draw some boobs in here to keep the 15-year-olds amused or whatever. It's done with a certain amount of, like I said, for all the garters and high heels, it's done with a certain of sense of intelligence and maturity and taste. Same thing with the violence. There's lots of things blowing up, lots of shootouts and things like that. But it's not gory. It's not particularly excessive. You know, if this were a movie and it came out today, it may be rated R, but only because of some of the language and some of the themes, not because it's particularly explicit. It's very, very smart writing. It's very clever, and it's very idiosyncratic, I should say. It's very definitely Howard putting in the things that he likes and he wants to see. So you've got the sex, you've got the violence, you've got, like I said, the social satire. There's references to, old school jazz in there, and it's very, very interesting. It's very dense, it's very textured, and it's very layered. I would say it was written back in the 80s, so there wasn't the whole idea of I'm writing for the trade. If you pick up the individual issues, or actually I should mention this, the first 12 issues are what you need to get, There's basically 4 3-story arcs, but they all combine to make a connected big story, and it all works and it all fits. What I was going to say about it being written back in the 80s, if you pick up any individual issue, you feel like you've read something. Any individual read just at random is a satisfying read. There is a beginning, middle, and end to each chapter, and of course, you get to the last page, you want to get to the next part. Another thing that was kind of innovative at the time was the style of art. Howard did all the layouts, the drawing, the inking, and everything, and he used something called, I guess, dual tone or dual board. I'm not an expert on that, but he was able to create a very unique sense of shading that hadn't been seen at the time. There's also a very interesting use of layout and panel arrangements and designs. And one thing that got a lot of attention, I believe, was the lettering by Ken Brusinak. I'm not too sure how you say his name. But as far as how not just the sound effects and the word balloons and things like that were positioned, but also all the logo designs and titles and things like that. And the thing is, like I said, it's very innovative, it's very different, very design heavy, but it doesn't take you out of the story. It doesn't look like a lot of razzmatazz for the sake of razzmatazz. It brings you into the story and makes it part of that world. It's really evident when you see some of the fill-in issues that were done later on by other artists, where they just drew some, it's very competent, nothing against all the other artists or Joe Staton or whoever else did, but it wasn't Chaykin's art. They didn't have his same sort of eye for detail. They didn't have his eye for fashion. They didn't have his eye for background details and composition and things like that. It was very standard art versus his very innovative art. Now, I know these stories were like reprinted in a couple of trades. I think from Image and then went to Dynamite. I know the first 14 issues were collected in 2 paperback trades, and then there's a big hardcover that has all 14 issues, plus I think some new material. The thing is, I would say find the if you can't find the trades, just walk into your normal brick and mortar store. You can probably find the individual issues and find them pretty cheaply. You could probably find them all for same amount you would spend for the trade. So I would say if you don't find them in a regular store, you order them online, you can definitely get them cheap. I would recommend this to anybody who cares about art, anybody who cares about smart writing. You know what? I am going to break it off here because I think I've got a little bit more to say about this. And so I'll do a part 2 for you guys. I'll see you soon.